Hi, this is Amy. Welcome to another Indygo Junction how-to video. Today we're going to talk about bias binding and share some time-saving tips for creating your own bias binding. Bias is defined as a diagonal line running at a 45-degree angle to the selvage of your fabric. Creating binding on the bias allows for more stretch and is especially useful on curved edges. Bias tape can be used for finishing edges and embellishing various projects and clothing. Bias binding can be purchased. Here is a familiar brand of Wrights. Some vintage packages I collected, as well as some I just purchased. Or you can make bias by hand from your own fabric coordinates. Traditionally, bias binding is created by first cutting out strips of fabric on the bias and then sewing them end to end. Instructions for creating bias using this traditional method will be provided in the PDF. First, we will touch on the traditional method of creating bias binding. Keep in mind, bias can be made in any size, but there are some standard sizes, including a 1/4 inch, a 1/2 inch, 3/4 inch, 1 inch, and 2 inches. Since each bias tape strip is created by folding the fabric strips to the center twice, to find the starting width of the strip, you must multiply your intended bias width by 4. In our demo, we will be creating 1/2 inch bias tape, so we are going to need to start with a 2-inch strip of fabric cut on the bias. We are going to show you how to create bias strips using the loop method. Nancy Zeman taught me this method. For this method, you will first need to cut a square of fabric. Mark 2 opposite edges with pins with the heads facing outward. Mark the other 2 edges with pins with the heads facing inward. Cut on a diagonal, making 2 triangles, so each piece has one of each type of pin. With right sides together, match the edges with the pin heads facing outward. Stitch a 1/4 inch seam and press open. Leave the pins facing inward in place. This is now a rectangle with the fabric on the bias. Draw cutting lines 2 inches apart lengthwise on the wrong side of the fabric. With right sides together, match the edges with the remaining pin heads facing inward, but offset the markings by the width of 1 strip marking. The lines you drew will line up. Stitch a 1/4 inch seam and press open. This is now a tube. Starting on one of the edges where the first line is offset, cut along the lines you drew, turning the tube as you go until you have cut the entire piece and you have one long continuous strip of bias. Press seam allowance open and press binding flat. Now you can proceed in one of several ways. You can manually iron the bias tape, or you can save time and use one of the various tools currently on the market. Simplicity Creative makes a more automated tool. It basically works by threading your bias strips into the machine and it irons for you. We are going to demo a manual tool from Clover. Clover makes a very simple and easy to use tool, the Bias Tape Maker. Simply thread through your bias strip and iron on the wrong side. Then to complete the process, you need only to press the folded edges to the center. Here are several samples of Indygo Junction patterns that feature bias trim. This is the thread-ready pincushion, the grommet wallet, and here is the pocket from the Invested in Style vest. I love the fabric combination. Here are some additional images and patterns to spur your creativity. Remember, bias is especially useful on curved edges as seen on these aprons. I hope you have enjoyed these tips on making bias tape. Here's the address where you can download an instructional PDF on making bias. Don't forget to visit indygojunction.com for patterns and tools seen in today's video. Thanks so much for watching.